Hi, Celine. How are you doing? Welcome to Naya Sim, and thank you all so much for all the love and support. Hope you all are doing great. Today, we'll be talking something very important, and it's about the news that broke today about Donald Trump. Supreme Court rules that Donald Trump had some immunity from persecution over January 6th. You all already know everything surrounding Donald Trump, the felonies, the indictment, and the rest of it. And you all know that he is also presidential aspirant. And not just only that, he is really on the full force. And with everything going on, people do not find that funny because they are questioning democracy. Like, what happened? Why was he granted immunity? And you all know with that immunity, if he eventually becomes the president, it means that he is going to pardon himself. So it's kind of, and then I don't think it's dicey, but the people's anger is that they already know how corrupt Supreme Court is, and they also want to know their mission or why they granted him that immunity from persecution. And does it mean that every? I mean, but I think it's really insane that somebody that has got over how many indictments that the court was able to give him immunity from persecution. It's kind of really weird, but it is what it is. You all already know how horrifying him coming back to become the president is already for people. But you know what? Let's get into this video.
Presidential immunity. I'll be fucking damned. Like, wasn't there a reason why the United States was created? Like, didn't Europeans leave to set up a colony here and then realize that, like, it was really fucked up? How there was just, like, this authoritarian rule from the, like, royal family and, like, the king, and that it was some bullshit that they had to follow this? And now we have presidents with presidential immunity. I mean, it's not as if we were even trying these motherfuckers for the crimes they're committing. All these motherfuckers are war criminals. They've all been war criminals for generations, for decades. They've all relentlessly bombed and maimed and destabilized countries all over the globe, entire regions of the globe. Like U.S. presidents have destabilized. And I just like with everything else that the Supreme Court has passed, they're like, here's a little extra, just a little. God. And let's take a look at this a little bit further. The Supreme Court on Monday ruled that presidents have immunity for official acts, but punted to the trial court the question of whether former President Trump's alleged conduct in his January 6th case was protected. Why it matters. The 6-3 decision, though not a sweeping victory for Trump, all but guarantees that his January 6th case won't go to trial before this year's presidential election. The trial had originally been scheduled to take place earlier this year, but was postponed indefinitely. A former president, so driving the news, a former president is entitled to absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for actions within his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote in the majority opinion. Now, something I do want to take from this that is very interesting is that, first of all, are we really still just like on the basis that we will never have a female president? Like, no woman will ever be able to be in the highest court position in the land. Like, I just think that's very interesting that this is always, and maybe it's written that way because there has yet to be a female president, but I think it's very interesting that we're using the word his here. But beyond all of that, this is fucking terrifying. Like, just, oh my god. And I think what makes this ever more interesting is the juxtaposition between the two sides of the court. Like, you can see very clearly that the Republican justices, the conservative justices, are like, yeah, this is great. He gets complete immunity. Like, him saying that Mike Pence, like attempting to like harass Mike Pence to get him to not certify the like election results was like official conduct. Like, there was nothing wrong with that. Do we not see how that, but oh my god, do we not see how terrifying that is? But ultimately, whether or not he like pressured Mike Pence will be sent down to a lower court. But do we not see where this is heading? Like, do we see how very quickly this is turning into, if a president does something to pressure people, to bribe people, to do any number of these things, under technicalities, that person would be conducting it under official presidential duties. So therefore, there's no crime being committed. Do we not? Oh my god, I I can't. And then on the flip side, let's look at the liberal justices. Let the president violate the law. Let him exploit the trappings of his office for personal gain. Let him use his official power for evil ends. That is the majority's message today. Just as Sonia Sotomayor wrote in her dissent. The relationship between the president and the people he serves has shifted irrevocably. In every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. This should fuck this country.
I'm an attorney in real life. I don't play well on television. And let's talk about the decision the Supreme Court has just issued saying that Trump has certain broad immunities and it may affect whether he is ever held accountable for his actions on January 6th. So when I first heard the media reports about the decision, I was thinking, oh, this is not so bad. The court basically said that Trump has official immunity for any presidential acts, no immunity if it's not presidential, and they were sending most of the case back to the lower courts to decide what's official and what's not. But when I actually read the decision, I realized we are in serious trouble. And let me explain why. So right off the bat, the Supreme Court deals with the issue of Trump using the Department of Justice to try to overthrow the legitimate results of the 2020 election. And so they talk about whether those particular charges can continue or whether they should be dismissed, whether it's an absolute immunity issue or it falls outside of an official act. This is very scary because our Supreme Court of these United States has now said that Trump's conversations with the Department of Justice, his attempts to influence people within the Department of Justice to investigate people and to try to overturn the election results is an official act. So let's play this out. Let's assume, heaven forbid, Trump is elected. He's elected in November. He has already told us that he is going to have his enemies investigated. He is going to have people like Biden, people like Hillary Clinton. He's going to have all of these people investigated and prosecuted. This Supreme Court decision gives him free rein to do that. They have said that the president talking to the Department of Justice about prosecutions is an official act. It is not subject to prosecution, to criminal prosecution. So what is there to stop Trump from having anyone? It could be a high-ranking official. It could be a former president. It could be a former first lady. Having any of them investigated. What's to stop him from having someone whose tweet he does not like investigated? So sometimes we think, oh, these things affect people who are elected politicians, people who are not like me and you. But the reality is the Supreme Court has now said Trump can have someone investigated and he's not subject to any rules, any checks, no balances, and basically we are all in jeopardy. So what happens next? So the district court has some issues to decide. The Supreme Court has said they need to decide whether the remainder of Trump's acts were official acts or if they were outside of official acts. So trying to get Mike Pence to not certify the election, these fake electoral schemes, was that official or outside of his official acts? And his words and statements to the people who stormed the Capitol, were those official acts or not official acts? So that's where we are at this point. But the reality is that with this decision, there is not going to be a decision about felon Trump in this particular case. It is not going to be heard by a jury. All the facts are not going to come out in a criminal prosecution. And if Trump is reelected, it also means that he is probably going to stop the further investigation and prosecution of these claims against him. So remember, the Supreme Court has said that the official acts, those dealing with the Department of Justice, he cannot be prosecuted for them. So of course, Trump can decide this case is over if he's reelected. They are not going to prosecute him. Let me know what you think in the comments. How do you think this is going to affect our democracy going forward? And for those of you who think this is a great thing because you like Trump, remember, Trump is not always going to be president. Someone that you like is not always going to be president. Apply your worst case scenario to this situation. A future president does something you believe is absolutely heinous, but he does it in his official capacity. Evaluate it from that perspective. Let me know what you think in the comments.
So, tonight is July the 1st. The first episode of Conversations with T. Nathan will be kicking off on the GCPR network and across all my platforms. And, it's going to be an interesting night because first up, we're going to talk about the Supreme Court ruling today that basically said that presidents have the ability to use SEAL Team 6 to assassinate their political enemies as long as it's an official act. In a 6-3 ruling today, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that the President of the United States has immunity in his official acts. But here's the problem. They did not define what official acts were, but they did state the following. In dividing official from unofficial conduct, courts may not inquire, wait for it, into the president's motives, nor may courts deem an action unofficial merely because it allegedly violates a generally applicable law. The Supreme Court has just basically ruled, in the face of all this talk about no one is above the law, that the President of the United States is. So this ruling is basically a death kill for any of the cases involving the prosecution of the former President of the United States, Donald Trump, in connection with his actions concerning January the 6th, and even quite possibly election interference. We will also talk about Trump ally Steve Bannon finally being sent to federal prison today after a 2-year delay since his sentencing on contempt of Congress charges. And we're also going to talk about Rocky Jones here, the owner of Rocky's Primetime Barbershop in Buckhead in Atlanta, and his allegations that he was blindsided by the Trump campaign to holding a Black Americans for Trump event in his barbershop. We will take a look at the contract that he signed. So come by and join the conversation at 10 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time, 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on the GCPR network. All of the links are in my beacon link in my bio. And let's get it.
Trump was essentially just granted immunity by the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court just released its decision in Trump versus the United States, where Donald Trump sued the government to ensure that he was granted immunity for any potential criminal acts that he committed while he was the president. We all know he got cases all across the country at this point where he's being prosecuted, and his argument is that he should be immune because he did it while he was the president. They just kind of agree with him. Under our constitutional structure of separated powers, the nature of presidential power entitles a former president to absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for actions within his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority. And he's entitled to at least presumptive immunity from prosecution for all his official acts. There is no immunity for unofficial acts. What does this mean? This means that the lower courts are essentially going to be deciding whether or not the acts that Donald Trump committed that he's being prosecuted for are official or unofficial acts. I'm not surprised, but I want to harken back to what I said about voting and why it matters. The Supreme Court justices that Donald Trump put into their chairs changed this Supreme Court from moderately liberal, moderate if you want to call it, to completely conservative. And the 3 justices that dissented are going to always be the dissenting justices. It is very clear that this Supreme Court is completely split down party lines, and we can expect that there will be more civil liberties and rights that will be stripped from us in the coming years because they have lifetime appointments. Not only that, one of the judges that are deciding whether or not these acts are official or unofficial could very well be one of the 500 plus judges that he put into federal judgeships while he was the president. Y'all, I don't know how else to say it. I don't know how else to say it. Y'all need to fucking vote.
No, guys, this is it. This is the breaking news of the year. I know that that's saying a lot because our insanely corrupt Supreme Court has handed down like 6 or 7 psychotic decisions in just the last week. Oh, but this is it. This is it. This is the one. Trump celebrates immunity case ruling. Liberal Supreme Court judge says president now is a king above the law. The U.S. Supreme Court rules that Trump has absolute immunity for official acts. This is probably the biggest case ever that's been decided on this corrupt-ass Supreme Court. Do any of you guys remember that before this went to the Supreme Court, when it was in the lower courts, that his lawyers actually argued in court that he could use SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political opponent and he should be able to get away with it because he's president? Anyone remember that? What this ruling means is that we have returned to monarchy. I really love all the conservatives celebrating this, even though they're the ones who love to wave the Gadsden flag. They're the "don't tread on me, 1776 is here, bitch." They love to celebrate the Revolutionary War and the fact that America broke away from the British. But apparently we're returning. Apparently we miss living under the rule of a monarchy. So we're going back. And it's also funny that they're celebrating it because you don't think this doesn't apply to Biden then? Like, it's like they're so dumb they don't think things through. Like, you do realize that by giving him absolute immunity like a fucking king, I thought we lived in a democracy, folks. A democracy? But you do realize that this applies to Biden too, right? So not only can Biden do whatever he wants, and you guys can put away that little fake impeachment that you had of him because he's president, he can do whatever he wants, he has absolute immunity, but also it means that he can do what you guys did in 2020. He can create fake electors, and he can tell Kamala Harris to send the electors, whatever they are, if Trump were to win, back to the states and just keep himself as president. Why not? Why not? If he can do it, why can't Biden? Biden can do it, according to this rule. Biden can do whatever he wants, according to this ruling. This ruling also says the whole "no one is above the law" routine is actually bullshit. I mean, we knew it was bullshit, but I just like that it's being written out now so we can all see it clearly. Because what they're saying is, yes, the president is above the law. The president is not like a regular citizen. He can get away with crimes. So if you're a corrupt piece of shit and you want to get away with a bunch of crimes, just run for president. We know, those of us who have been talking about this late stage capitalist empire crumbling before our eyes, we've known this for a while. We've known that it's continuing to crumble. And yes, these kind of empires, they don't just like collapse in one day. They happen like this. It's like erosion over time. More rights get taken away. The corruption gets worse. Income inequality gets worse. We have a Supreme Court that basically acts at the behest of corporations and dark money billionaires. They make bribery and corruption legal, as they started to do in the 70s, and then they really took a bludgeon to it in 2010 with Citizens United, and now a couple days ago they made it legitimately legal for public officials to take bribes, including members of the Supreme Court that do take bribes. So when people say that these precedents are dangerous, that's the reason why people freaked out in 2010 about Citizens United, because they knew that this was coming. And you know what? I'm going to talk about this a lot more on my live today at 4 on YouTube, same handle, I am Blakely. I think we really need to talk about actually where this started and where a lot of this kind of got kicked off, this Supreme Court. It started with Al Gore. Like, a lot of times we don't understand how we got to a place that we got. And we're like, how did this happen? How did this happen? It started with Al Gore. It started with the 2000 election, this particular Supreme Court, and how this particular part of our empire started crumbling. Obviously, there's a lot of other aspects of how the empire got to the stage that it's at. All of that, how it plays in. It's obviously multifaceted. But speaking specifically about politics and our Supreme Court, a lot of this started in 2000 when we accepted, as a country, the Supreme Court stealing the election, because it was the Supreme Court. After the recounts, everybody knows all this history. It had turned out that Gore had won Florida, the Electoral College. The Supreme Court stopped the count because they wanted to install a Republican. This goes back, and you see it crumbling and crumbling and crumbling. It will eventually fully collapse. But just so people understand, this all didn't just happen overnight. This was decision after decision after decision, year after year after year. It's like the frog in boiling water. It is really funny, too, how it ended up like this. That the Republicans were the ones for years and years and years that waved their Gadsden flags and talked about their Second Amendment because of government tyranny. Love the Constitution. They were the Constitution people. They always had a pocket one. It's just really funny that they ended up being the ones that returned us back to British monarchy. Abolish the Supreme Court. And by the way, if Democrats actually really cared about this, they would have already started impeachment hearings on those corrupt-ass justices a long time ago, but they didn't. They have aided and abetted Republicans demolishing democracy every step of the way.
Well, the Supreme Court certainly hit the ground running on a Monday morning, handing down what is going to be a historic decision. They decided today that Donald Trump does have some immunity from prosecution in the criminal case against him over January 6th. Basically, they said anything that he did in an official capacity, he is immune from prosecution from. This is a question that's never really been asked before and never had to be clarified before. So these decisions, whatever they ultimately are, have far-reaching implications for our country moving forward. The Supreme Court has now kicked this down to the lower courts to try and answer the now pressing question, which is, what is official capacity? Trump and some others would argue anything he does while he's president is official capacity. Legal scholars definitely disagree with that. His attorney's arguing that things like him calling Rudy Giuliani and asking him to spread misinformation about the election, not official, but him talking to the head of the RNC and asking them basically to help overturn the election is official. A lot of others disagree with that, but that's the argument that his attorney is making. And now the courts have to decide what actually is official business of the president that then garners that immunity, and what is just, him committing crimes and trying to overthrow our government. Ultimately, though, this is a win for Donald Trump because what he and Republicans want most is to delay this. The judge of the case said once she receives it back, it's going to be at least 3 months before it goes to trial. So every time this gets kicked around, it just delays that further. They want this to not happen until after the election in the hopes that he is reelected. And there's an argument being made that if he were elected, if he were president, and he was charged federally and found guilty, that he could then just pardon himself because these are federal charges. Literally, that's a whole other debate, whether or not he could actually do that. But the language is very vague on that, and it kind of looks like someone could. It's not lost on me that this is a Supreme Court where 3 of the appointees were appointed by Donald Trump, and 2 of the others are pretty conservative. So it's a strange time. I don't know how else to put it. Strange time, and it will, at the very least, be interesting to see how this plays out. But in the meantime, he got what he wanted today. He got the delay.
This is all I got from this
And we're just going to have to roll with it.
and man, this is really real. This is real. So I really do not understand what they meant that Laura says that the democracy, or I'm not saying it anymore because now it looks like some kind of people with caliber are above the law, because I do not see how the court, the Supreme Court, will rule that Trump got immunity. So now it means that if Trump gets into power as he stands, I am not sure what it's going to be of so many people or United States as a whole. But and also him having immunity, does it also mean that Trump, like Joe Biden, can also pew Trump and not get into trouble? I need to already understand, because one thing for sure I am going to say is that I know there is almost everywhere is corrupt, but Supreme Court is really very corrupt. And sometimes I feel like there is something like lobbying that goes around because I do not see how they woke up and all they could do was to give immunity to somebody with so many felonies. So it means that if Trump, like this last, if Trump becomes the president, this is if he becomes the president, it means that he can also pardon himself. Yeah, presidential pardon. So he can pardon himself of all the felonies he already got, and that can be struck out and all that. But man, this is absolutely terrible. I am not going to lie to you. But fingers are really crossed, and we are hoping and believing. I don't know, but it looks like I just really hope nothing gets bad, like because the way it's going, the truth is that both of them are not even fit for to be the president. I'm sorry to say that, but that is the truth. Both of them are not sound to be president, but both of them are also evil. But one is of a lesser, and at the same time, they are both old. What are they looking? Did they keep anything in like in White House that they are looking for that they haven't found? I mean, they have done how many years already, and I think just one thing with politics is that you can never get enough of feed and power intoxicate absolute power. Everybody wants that power to keep it because they really need it. They want to use it, and it's in kind of scary with the whole thing that how the Supreme Court ruled over this, and also I hope U.S. taxpayers. I hope the government, because the way the whole thing is going, I feel they are also using the taxpayers' money because what in the nonsense is going on? And I don't think there is any way that democracy can be protected because the way it looks, they all can say that it is also the government that is, because court is also part of the government and they are the ones ruling or trying not to protect democracy. Because if they are for democracy, I am sure what happened today wouldn't have happened. And the country is just in danger. And I really hope something is being done, but I really do not know what it's going to happen. So, as we all can see, it is now between Trump and Joe Biden. Because from what I am seeing, they are saying that they would not want to withdraw Joe Biden from the race. Yeah, from what I saw today online, on the news, they said we are not withdrawing Joe Biden out of the race because if we do, it means that we've lost our chances because Trump is winning everything. I mean, like it's taking back the seat. And you all already know what's going to happen. I didn't know what's going to happen, but I don't think it's going to be a great time. That's all I have to say. Let me know what you all think in the comment section about this Supreme Court rule because I really do want to know what you all think about the immunity that was granted to Donald Trump. See you all in my next video. Bye for now.